Your
Oh, that's the
story,
old
and you're
Canadian.
gay, so you're like even more empathetic than a normal human
Yeah,
being. Like
maybe.
I find gay men are like overly sensitive to the needs of others,
We
much
have high
more.
EQ, apparently.
Yeah, you do.
That's what they say. And there we go. We're
Just
live. Ah,
hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Hi, Lauren. Hi, everyone.
something
Hi,
cool
America.
over
Hi,
here.
Canada. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Maria, Lynn, Carl, Danny. God, I loved it. You know what? I could start a podcast every 5 minutes and just shut it off just to see all the people come in.
It is a fun thing. You know, you don't get to see this in radio. You don't get to see it on TV. You don't get to see the audience
Yeah.
like sort of piling into the room. It does feel very nice when everyone shows up and look at a great group of people there are today. It's so nice to have
Right.
you here.
Yeah, we got Canada in the house. You know what, everybody in the chat, if you're watching, listening, I know we've got about 100 people in here in the first like 60 seconds. And we usually end up between, 7 and 1,000. But smash that heart. More importantly, share a little square with the arrow on the top of it. Share it to anybody you think that might like to watch this today, might like to talk about Trump Epstein's explosion, the forthcoming well sourced story that is about to blow things up, which is why Donald Trump is getting out from underneath it. We usually have the top 5 stories of the day, but when one thing can kill the Teflon Don, when one story is about to destroy the man who is trying to destroy America, destroy democracy, destroy goodwill, destroy freedom, destroy basic human rights, you kind of got to make the whole five stack about Donald Trump and the Trump/Epstein files, don't
Yeah.
you? Don't you?
I mean, I think you do because I tried to put together a 5 stack and find all these other stories that are good stories. They're big stories, and any other day we'd cover them all completely. But they pale in comparison to what's going on right now with the Epstein files because we're in the midst of a Watergate-esque kind of cover-up that could bring down the presidency. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. So, there's lots to talk about. I covered a few stories on narrative.org yesterday, which have received some attention, but there's also more coming. As yesterday, I went through some of my Hoffenberg tapes that I have not aired before, and discovered some sensational stuff that just went past me when I first heard it, and now getting on second hearing, realized that there are a lot of interesting stories inside what Hoffenberg told me in those Hoffenberg tapes that
So
I could
fill us
share
in
with.
because you like to you've got the benefit of having already done the work 6-7
Yeah,
years ago because you did the
yeah,
legwork. Before we get to the five stack,
yeah.
and hi everybody, no idea where you're from today. America, Canada, United States, I love you. Switzerland in the house. I think we got Germany in the house. Tell us where you're from today. Thank you very much, Debbie. Appreciate it. I love writing stuff for you. But give us a little bit of this Hoffenberg backstory before we get to it, because what I want everybody to understand is that we're not just spouting up. Zev is an expert when it comes to Epstein, when it comes to transnational bullshit that we've been talking about, when it comes to Elon Musk, Bitcoin. He's legitimately an expert. You get 10,000 hours in a subject, you're an expert. 6 years ago, you start putting some stuff out and you got put into a career cul-de-sac by the Epstein/MAGA/cabal, right? So
Mhm.
let's just give a little backstory to why you talked to Steve Hoffenberg before we get to the five stack today, because I think this is important. It's important context for people.
Yeah. So Steve Hoffenberg was this really larger than life kind of character. He looked like he came out of the movies, out of a mob movie. He's just had that kind of swagger about him. He had the way he's from New York, had the way of talking that, he was always trying to find an angle, always trying to find a scheme, always trying to make money. And he grew up in an era where Donald Trump was idolized as the number one guy in all of this in New York. And he was friends with Donald Trump. He had his offices under Donald Trump's office in the Trump Tower. He at one point was the publisher of the New York Post because he was able to scheme his way into that with some of his associates. But he's I guess, most known for spending 18 years in jail for committing a massive crime, a Ponzi scheme, which at the time was the biggest Ponzi scheme in American history. And he did it with Jeffrey Epstein. Hoffenberg was the chairman of a company called Towers Financial, and he hired Epstein for $25,000 a month to advise him on various things. And they landed up, making this company into a giant Ponzi scheme. And when it collapsed, both of them were suspected of it, but it was Hoffenberg who landed up going to jail for the crimes because
it's this gentleman right here. This
Yeah.
gentleman. Sorry, I gotta pay for that post thing. But yes, Steve Hoffenberg. I get it. The
Yeah.
older gentleman. Yeah, he died when
Yeah,
he was
so
77 a number of years ago. Yes.
Yeah, so there was one as the Epstein story was just breaking, as he was arrested when he returned to Teterboro that one day. I had already started investigating Epstein's existence and all that kind of stuff, and then I noticed a press release from Steve Hoffenberg, and his number was at the bottom of this press release, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to give him a call. Maybe he knows something.
I called his phone number in there.
Yeah, and because he wanted some, maybe someone would be stupid enough to call, and I was the stupid guy who called. And yet it turned out to be fascinating. I mean, he gave me such an inside track on what was going on with Epstein because he was still in contact at the time, I believe, with Epstein. He was certainly involved in understanding what Epstein was doing inside MCC at the time.
Yeah.
Together, we pieced together the entire Epstein crime history, everything that he wasn't even aware of all the stuff. He knew some of it because the stuff he was involved in. He knew about the girls because that had been obviously out there. But he hadn't even pieced together some of the biggest parts of those stories, which is how Towers Financial was actually included in the IranContra affair as a way of laundering money for the IranContra affair. That it was actually a vehicle created by the GOP to help facilitate that. And that Epstein's position in life was uniquely placed, as he was both a mathematical wizard. He knew how to do math really well, and he also knew crime really well. And I think it was the man who introduced Epstein to Hoffenberg, Douglas Neese, who told him that this guy is brilliant mathematically and morally has no compass, which made him perfect for the things that they were doing. In Neese's case, they were buying weapons, doing arms trading at that time for the Al Yamana Saudi deal, which was the biggest British arms deal at the time, but also for Towers Financial, which also involved lease and which also involved the need of a criminal mind. And Epstein was the criminal mind. So I got from him an incredible sense, because he was with Epstein for many, many years, sat right next to each other, understood him very, very well. Got a lot of information from Epstein.
Partners in crime, right?
Yeah, they were partners.
Yeah.
And so I got an inside view on what Epstein was doing, thinking, saying all the way through his career. And what's really interesting is when Epstein died, I've told you the story before, that morning I called Hoffenberg and he was in hospital because he was getting
ready for a medical procedure, and
he
he refused to have the medical procedure go forward because he thought someone's going to fucking
he thought Trump was going to kill him. He thought Trump was going to kill him because he thought Trump had killed Epstein. And I was on,
probably did.
Well,
hey, Trey probably did. Between him and Bill Barr, they probably killed Epstein.
It looks like that. I mean, it looks to one that there's this cover up is an indicator that there is so much in there, and we know there's so much in there. Hoffenberg told me how much was in there, and some of it I put out, some of it I haven't. But there is the complicity of this president with Epstein is
crazy.
Is crazy. It's documented. It's legendary. And it's the reason I think that they're freaking out right now, because it's not like they think the goods might be out there. They know the goods are out there. They know someone is about to, has been unloading a mother load on these guys. And it's every single day we find out new information. That's just unbelievable.
Well, and it explains everything. And again, just to kind of put a bow on the Hoffenberg conversation I wanted to have, is that Zev has been interviewing these people, hundreds of hours of interviews. He's been preparing specials, put specials out that got legitimately no traction. Now he's bringing those back as we're ferrying through this information between Trump and Epstein to give you backstory and context about this transnational pedophile honeypot ring, and the criminal elements behind it. And who's involved. Pardon me, I just drank a bubbly. And so it's really important because a lot of times, people like Zev, people like Lev, journalists will put things out ahead of time. Julie Brown down at the Miami Herald will put things out and they'll get panned and ratioed and put into the cooler. Mm-hmm. And then years later, they get vindicated and justified. And that's what we're seeing now with a bunch of the Epstein stuff. Today, as we start the 5 stack, which will just be a hodgepodge of, 5 of the worst aspects of what we know is going to come out, Donald Trump legitimately, and it's not like this is the first meltdown. melted down today like I have never, ever seen before.
Yeah.
Started with a Truth Social tweet this morning at about 9:30, 10 o'clock, maybe 11, and I'm going to read it to you because, if you're not guilty, fucking act like it, dude. Act like it. Don't pretend
he's not good at that.
No, and then dementia doesn't help, and the cognitive decline, which we'll get to, doesn't help either. But Donald Trump is guilty AF, as the kids say. And how do I know? I'm going to read you something, and then we're going to refer to a video, which we can't obviously play on Substack Live. By the way, Hamish, if you're watching, Substack founder, one of the founders, you need a playback live interactive version on the app. That's what you need. You really need it. Anyway, so there's this Truth Social tweet that he put out today where he went after his base. Not only went after his base, but legitimately called the entire fucking thing a hoax, Zev.
Yeah.
A hoax. Not, this is no big deal. It's a fucking hoax. Not people are coming for me. It's a fucking hoax.
That's what he said about Russia. Remember that? He kept saying it was a hoax.
It's a
hoax. Wasn't a hoax either.
That's how you know it's true when he uses the word hoax. Anytime someone's like, it's a hoax, Russia hoax, he's involved with Russia. So let me read this to you. He put this out this morning at 9:43 a.m. The radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again. That's an admission, by the way. So let's just park that. Just like the fake and fully discredited Steele dossier, not fake, not discredited. Everything in there has been proven real. The lying 51 intelligence agents, they were all fired by him for telling the truth.
Yeah.
Laptop from hell. Again, these are dog whistles to the mega base, which Dems swore had come from Russia. No, it came from Hunter Biden's bathroom. Even the Russia scam itself, scam hoax, that's just him saying, this is real. I need you to believe it's a scam. Totally fake and made up story used to hide crooked Hillary Clinton's big loss in the 2016 presidential election. These scams and hoaxes are, again, there you go. These real stories, scams and hoaxes, are all the Democrats are good at. So he's admitting that there's something there. Like, that's the fucked up part.
The thing is, everything in these lists, everything in this list is real. I mean, it's not like the laptop did originate from Russia, at least the versions that were distributed to Rudy Giuliani and company. That's been proven. The whole investigation into Hunter Biden was dictated by the Russians. The Russia thing was not a scam. I mean, of course, he was involved with Russia in getting elected in 2016.
Dude, we've had Lev Parnas, who is in charge of cooking up the Russia, Ukraine hoax. I do a podcast with him on fucking Mondays.
Yeah.
Like, it's so fucking true. It hurts.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's all they have. They're no good at governing, no good at policy, no good at picking winning candidates. So he's saying, you're going to be in trouble. If I get in trouble, you're going to be in trouble because they're going to come back to power. That's what he's saying there. Also, unlike Republicans, they stick together like glue. Unlike Republicans. That's fucking crazy.
Republicans are like a one-party state.
They're like a criminal amoeba.
Yeah.
Their new scam is what we will forever call, this is it, the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters have bought into this bullshit. This is where we get awesome. Hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. I've had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history. And all these people want to talk about with strong prodding by fake news and the success star of Dems is the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented success. There is none. Because I don't want their support anymore. Thank you for attention for this matter. Again, thank you for the attention to this matter. Make America great again. What Donald Trump said in that Truth Social post, which he reiterated in the Oval Office, is there's a story coming out about me that's going to co-sign every single thing you've heard about me in the Epstein files. So what I really, really, really want to implore on you is if you believe it, fuck you ahead of time. I don't want you on my team. This is resentment Don talking, by the way. This isn't like President Don. There's different versions of Don. There's pedophile Don. There's resentment Don. Pedophile Don's the guy that says something to people on the elevator like, "Is that your daughter? She's 10. I'm going to date her in 10 years." That's pedophile Don.
Yeah.
This is resentment Don, where he's like, "There's something coming. I'm fucked. And if you believe it, fuck you. I don't want your support anyway." And not only do I know it's coming, a professor and journalist named Philip P. O'Brien, who is a legendary professor for strategic studies, the author of The Strategist. He is well-renowned. Yasir Muhammad, another very well-renowned journalist. And then we've got a couple of other people like, it doesn't matter. I've heard from other people in this atmosphere that in the next few days, and I want everybody to pay attention to me, and again, hit that heart button and share this, that there is a story corroborating Donald Trump's deep involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, Jeffrey Epstein's list, Jeffrey Epstein's files, Jeffrey Epstein's pictures, and Jeffrey Epstein's videos, as well as other very prominent people who have been suggested as being involved in the Epstein pedophile ring in the coming days. And not only are all the people that I mentioned, and let me just read this from Professor Philip O'Brien. For what it's worth, there's a source that I'm hearing about story Trump Epstein. It's going to break. Certainly seems to be losing his mind about Epstein. In the Oval Office, did the same thing again. The Crown Prince of Bahrain sitting next to him. He's like, these people are weaklings. They're stupid. They're dumb. Meg is dumb. You don't believe. This is old man tantrum. I got fucking caught. I need to grease the tracks because I am in serious jeopardy of losing the cult base that wants answers, the presidency, which he scammed, and everything he has lied his dick off for 79 years for. That is what that tweet says, that Truth Social post. That is what his video from the Oval Office says today. And that is why we are having this 5-stack today, because not only are the walls coming in, the roosters have come home and the ceiling is on fire, and Donald Trump, the beginning of the end is nigh, my friend.
Now, that'll be great if such a story comes up. Now, I have been around this block so many times, and, I reported a lot of this stuff 6 years ago. I even had a deal with CNN to make it into a big international story, which they reneged on day one of our shoot because this was basically a catch and kill. There are powers inside the media institutions of America that are going to try and kill the story, as they have many, many times before. So I will see this. I'll believe this when I see it. I believe there's journalists working on this. Of course, they have to be working on it. But is it going to make the front pages of the newspapers? I don't know if we know that yet. Are there editors that are courageous enough to do this? Are there owners of newspapers that are actually willing to put this on the front pages? I don't know. I don't know the reality of that. It's the truth of it is a lot of them are controlled by other national interests, and those are going to be playing out in the boardrooms, not in the newsrooms of these institutions as they decide whether to publish it or not. In the meantime, I have already published a lot, and I continue to publish a lot of what I know, and what I know is already dramatic. I mean, there is so much information that we have about not just the girls, because the girls are so latent and so obvious and so there, and have been adjudicated, certainly in Epstein's case. But the other stuff, the financial crimes, the tanking of the markets, this participation in a transnational criminal organization, really, the obstruction of justice, the complete fabrication of entire narratives in American history, maybe even the involvement in things like 9/11. We're seeing so much that has never been told, and this is why the Epstein story is so remarkable, because it is far larger than life. It is far larger than any life you can imagine. This guy was a super agent, really. He was not just a typical secret agent or an asset. He was just almost like Robert Maxwell, someone who, and it's no coincidence that he's the heir apparent to Robert Maxwell, someone who was able to change the way history was running, to change the course of history. Robert Maxwell was instrumental in ending the Soviet Union. He was good friends with Gorbachev. He was um, close to the head of the KGB. He was instrumental in creating an environment the Soviet Union would collapse. That's how powerful this so-called just media publisher was in terms of his ability to navigate the world stage. Epstein had similar kinds of involvement in very, very big deals. Of course, he was more of a technocrat in some ways because he was more of a criminal financial wizard. But his involvement in everything from rigging the FIFA World Cup to rigging the collapse of 2008, the market collapse in 2008, his continued involvement with MBS, is requires a lot of scrutiny because that's an interesting business partner or sponsor to have. His involvement with Israel, obviously, his involvement with all the blackmail, which we still do not have a full handle on. I mean, the girls were there as a means to an end. And yesterday I published.
They were one aspects of the strategy of that
Yeah.
transnational criminality, right?
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
right. This was how they were. This was their insurance scheme. A lot of the time is the blackmail they had. Now, was Bill Clinton compromised by Jeffrey Epstein? Was the Monica Lewinsky scandal, was that a Epstein product? Was Donald Trump compromised by Epstein, or was he a willing participant? Was Prince Andrew compromised, or was he a willing participant? And this goes on and on and on. And who exactly negotiated that sweetheart deal that he got? My records indicate that Andrew himself was involved in getting as Epstein that sweetheart deal. That's a significant detail. I mean, the fact that we've got everyone from the royal family to the arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi to the Marcos family to Donald Trump to Bill Clinton involved in this one man's zeitgeist tells you how much involvement he had and how much influence he had on the world. So this is much more than just a story about child abuse or human trafficking ring, which it certainly was. I mean, it's hard to avoid. I don't know if you got to see the thing I posted yesterday of the Katie Johnson's affidavit, which is
stunning.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly her, and it's clearly her story, and it's everything about it sounds about as right as it can be.
Yeah, just a little context there too, just for you and for everybody watching and listening. Katie Johnson launched a lawsuit claiming she was raped at the age of 13 by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein in Jeffrey Epstein's mansion with Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein present. And the violence that she describes is something else. And it is not just corroborated, but there are some mainstream independent media outlets that have verified that information, like the Mycelis brothers at Midas Touch. So, when you posted that yesterday, and it's funny because I watch your analytics, right? I'm an analytics guy. I'm not a numbers guy, but I'm an analytics guy because you want to see what works and what doesn't, but you also want to see what connects with people and what doesn't. And the thirst behind this story and some of the analytics behind some of your reporting that you've been on for a long time that you're now regurgitating for the benefit of people for context is gone bananas. Like you've seen a real return on the work that you did 6 years ago because it's so relevant today, and it offers people a little bit of a ladder or a roadmap to kind of understand, not just what's at stake, but who's involved, why, what the deal is. And to your point, and I think it goes without saying for a lot of the people, very, very smart people and listeners that we have to this the Substack Live that we do daily at 3:00, like very bright. I'm always amazed. I learn so much from the people in the chat, more than I do from, anything I read, is the co-signing of that and them saying, yes, we've known about this for a long time, but information continually disappears or it is suppressed. Now, the reason why it's suppressed is because what you're going to find out, hopefully, due to some brave organizations in the United States, Canada. I think there are a couple of international organizations. I don't know if you've been watching some organizations like The Guardian, say what you want about The Guardian. They've been pretty forward. Intercept, The Atlantic, is that you've got, outside MSNBC, CNN, even though Jeff Zucker's a Trump guy, you've got some people who are willing to put their nuts on the table. Pardon the French. And now is the time for that, because I was thinking about it today. We're not just trying to catch the world's most up and coming dictator red-handed. We're talking about accountability for thousands of young women and girls who were used as pawns in a deep, dark, sexual hostage honeypot operation, pedophile honeypot operation for 30 years. We're talking government officials, celebrities, lawmakers, possibly Supreme Court judges. We're talking about presidents of countries that have been, I'm going to go out on a limb. It could be, there's a picture of Ehud Barak walking into Jeffrey Epstein's mansion.
Yeah.
And I am sure that it is full court press at this point to prevent the embarrassment of the legacy of countries and the perception that certain administrations, individuals, and brands want you to think that they have, which they don't. Because what you don't understand, and I know this, you know this, is that there is a level above humanity where intelligence and espionage sits, where any dirt that they can get on anybody is worth something. And people like Jeffrey Epstein, and I'll go a step further, Donald Trump for 30 years, have been used to be able to perpetrate crimes against humanity, against young women, for the purposes of foreign policy, for the purposes of foreign dominance, for the purposes of making money. That part is very fucking real. And we're seeing it now. And if you think this is about MAGA, you're crazy. This is about some seriously important, powerful world elites trying to keep the fucking top on the pressure cooker, which is the Trump Epstein files.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned Ehud Barak, because he's actually the start of our second episode of The Secret Life of Jeffrey Epstein way back when, which we're repeating tomorrow night at 7 p.m., is all about Ehud Barak. Because, you know, it's interesting that this guy that I would have considered a real hero in Israeli history for all the actual fighting he's done and the remarkable career he's had as a liberal leader in Israel. You know, it's interesting that even he was caught up in this intelligence operation as a spy. You know, at the end of the day, Ehud Barak was sneaking in to Jeffrey Epstein's apartment, not
wearing a mask.
To like a wrapped in like a I don't know, just wrapped up in so much scarves.
It
looked ridiculous.
Yeah,
it wasn't
like
that close. It wasn't that.
He
cold
looked
today.
like Pud from those those comics. Those,
exactly.
Bubblegum comics. Yeah.
So, you know, this guy wasn't there to sleep with women or anything like that. This was his operation. He was there to get the dirt. You know, he was there to find out what his guy had found out, and how they were managing to control the day-to-day politics of America. You know, I'll just say this once again, that their concern around Bill Clinton was that he was going to be another Carter, that he was going to sign a deal or negotiate a deal with the Palestinian Liberation Organization that was going to be to the detriment of Israel. So they sent Epstein in to be the guy who would stop that. And Epstein became first started as a small financier for Bill Clinton, and ended up being the main guy for a lot of the Clinton financing for his campaigns, and ultimately was the guy who came up with the Clinton Foundation for Bill Clinton. And some believe it's still that right till the very end he was still involved in the Clinton Foundation, which became, you know, controversial in itself, with just being a ton of money thrown at the Clintons. But I digress, because Ehud Barak was there to get the dirt, so he knew exactly how to play all these leaders on Congress, how to play Bill Clinton, how to play whoever was in power at the time, and this continued on for decades. So when we see the hold Israeli officials have over politicians in America, it's real. I mean, we see that when Benjamin Netanyahu comes to Washington, D.C.
You're Jewish, right?
Yeah, I'm Jewish, born in Israel.
Good.
I'm an Israeli. I'm never mind Jewish. I'm like, This is my country. So I can say without a shadow of a doubt that the influence that they have over American politicians is way more than any other country. I mean, when Netanyahu comes to town, he gets meetings with the president. He gets meeting with the Speaker of the House. He gets a special meeting with the Secretary of Defense. This is not normal. It's last time they let him address the whole Congress. this is not normal for any other leader of any world country. It's somehow the Israeli agenda, as it were, but also the Israeli manipulation of American politics is quite is so intense and so unscrupulous in many ways, and probably involves all sorts of blackmail and other things, that it's able to elevate this particular country above any other country. Some would say maybe it's even more important than American politics in some ways. So, it breaks my heart. I got to tell you, as an Israeli who loves loves that country, whose my family lives there, and they're liberal-minded people who certainly would never endorse anything like this. It's heartbreaking that this is what Israel has done. They will argue, as I had this argument with Ari Ben Menashe, and he said, the older generation of Israelis was always so fearful of the destruction of Jews and destruction of Israel that came out of the Holocaust. This is what their lives were obsessed with, just staying alive, keeping Israel secure was all they could think about. Younger generations of Israelis don't think that way. They've been, they've got a different sense of security around their position in the world. But the tactics have stayed the same. The strategy of blackmail, the strategy of manipulations have remained the same because of that fear. And, the best thing that can happen to the world right now is that generation of politicians just leaves office. I think we've seen enough of this kind of, this revenge games, these retribution games, these false flags, all these things that are just constantly being repeated by Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. And it's just this endless parade of the same thing over and over again. We can see through it. We know what's going on, and it's tired. The world is tired of this. There could be a future for the world which doesn't contain all these events, all these false flags where people are dying innocently because of, the whims of one particular leader or another.
I'm really grateful to have you as a Substack Live /podcast partner when we talk about this subject, as a Jewish person, as an Israeli individual, as a citizen of Israel, as someone who has skin in the game, because I've said this before and it goes without saying, and it often gets glossed over by people who want to cast aspersions with giant fucking paintbrushes.
Mm-hmm.
The Benjamin Netanyahu is to Israel what Donald Trump is to America and has been for 20 plus years. And he has done everything he can, from fucking start a war to start another war to start another war to stay in power, to keep his wife out of jail, to keep him out of jail. Mm-hmm. He was under investigation, criminal investigation, supposed to be a trial about a week and a half ago, before Donald Trump stepped in on his behalf and threatened Israel, the state of Israel, the Israeli people, to remove the ability to defend themselves militarily, to take away arms from them, unless this is, and this gets glossed over a lot too, unless they drop the fucking investigation into Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah, ridiculous.
He basically threatened their own security. He threatened Jewish people, the Israeli people's security, unless they dropped the legitimate criminal investigation into Benjamin Netanyahu.
Extortion.
And they did. He extorted them. The Israeli people are pawns in this. They are not Netanyahu fans. I don't know what his approval rating is in Israel, but the last time I checked, it was Donald Trump-esque.
Depending on the time, after the wars, maybe it's a little higher now, but it's certainly not. There's a vast number, I would say the majority of Israelis, who are still in reality opposed to his leadership. The wars change perspectives when you're under fire all the time. So that sort of has maybe emboldened him a little bit. But he's not a friend of democracy. He's not a friend of Israel. The last few days I've been having it just in my mind. It keeps repeating the national anthem of Israel, which is all about the hope. It's Hatikva is all about the hope, which is about living in freedom in your country amongst all these other people in the world, and living and enjoying freedom together with all the other parts of the world. And that it's at the core of what Israel is all about. Israel has always been a place for freedom and embracing liberal ideology, and has never been a place for this kind of conservative awfulness that they're inflicting on the world right now.
Fascism.
fascism, basically. I mean, it's hard to believe Israel, of all countries, is in order to protect themselves, in order to maintain their
Well,
security.
Israel isn't Netanyahu, and
Yes,
his hardliners are.
yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely. Yeah.
And there is another way, but they're determined to do it this way. And if they've subverted American democracy, they don't care because it's in their national security interests. If they've subverted the ideal of democracy and freedom around the world, they don't care because it's in their national security interest. But it's not really in their national security interest. It's just their perception of what's in their national security interest. There is another way. I think Obama tried to find that way. Bibi, stalled him. It was a real pain in the butt in terms of a negotiating partner, and ultimately supported Obama's opponents. And ever since Bibi has decided that he hates Obama and hates the Democrats, he's been completely on the GOP's side every single election. And what we've had in 2016 was a remarkable, weighing in of Israeli intelligence using things like the Psy Group, PSY, to completely radically influence the election process in 2016, which is how Donald Trump was elected in the first place. That and Russian interference as well. And so we continue to see Israel just overstepping its bounds and interfering in American politics, but getting away with it. Why? Because they have the blackmail, because they have the strings that they can pull inside DC. And, even with me, for sure, they try to damage my reputation. I'm Israeli. I mean, if one person they shouldn't be trying to get at is an Israeli, but they still went after me with their intelligence operations. And it just tells you how lost they are, because the truth is not their enemy. The truth is the friend of Israel. It always has been the friend of Israel and the Jewish people around the world. And to now have them peddling lies, to have them doing this thing, this whole cover up of Jeffrey Epstein, they blame the Democrats. They try to frame the Democrats. Then they blame the Democrats for this porn, this child human trafficking ring. But they're the ones who created the suspicion in the first place. They're the ones who created the conditions where these kids were being abused. They're the ones who created the blackmail opportunities, and then the sickness of then starting a QAnon in order to, make everyone believe that it's the Democrats. It's just, I don't know. There's a level of grossness that is just come on, just come on. This is beyond the pale endless amounts of times when you're, telling the world that innocent people are committing crimes and they're not.
Yeah. Well, good old fashioned blackmail. Someone just said it in the chat, and that is that is it. And I think about, to pivot from, Netanyahu's role in this, and I do not doubt, because of Epstein, Israeli espionage. I do not doubt Russian espionage. I do not doubt the relationships between Netanyahu, Putin, and Trump. I do not doubt any of those things. That you can see it plain as day. And I do not doubt that there is major heat here when it comes to what Donald Trump's about to go through. Trump said, and keep in mind, he's the gatekeeper right now of the Epstein files.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is the last line of defense between himself, who is allegedly a pedophile. We know he's a sexual abuser of women. We know that he is involved with people who have serially sexually abused women. Trump came out today, as we said earlier, and said the whole thing's a hoax. I want to point to something that happened about 4 months ago. Phase 1 of the Epstein files. Do you remember this? You remember phase 1?
I think they were released. Yeah,
see this? See this little picture of all those right-wing influencers with the Epstein files?
Yes, I remember that. Holding up these files.
Today it's a hoax. Today it's a hoax. Democrat-inspired, written hoax by he named everybody who has prosecuted him, who has attacked him, who has prosecuted or attacked Benjamin Netanyahu, prosecuted or attacked Russia, Rand Paul, all of these people. He went after all of these people. And he said the Epstein hoax was made up by Democrats, and everyone who's prosecuted him said maggots were stupid for believing any of it. I'm just happy to be old enough to remember that picture where he handed over in the Oval Office to paid right-wing propagandists like Liz Wheeler, that dumpy, homely looking woman from Libs of TikTok. I don't know what her name is. Yeah,
Ben Johnson is there, I think.
DC Drano, Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, all the fucking people you know and have been outed as paid agents of MAGA or foreign state media with fake binders, which he passed off as real 5 months ago. Pam Bondi passed off as real with redacted information that was publicly available. And they all went, this is publicly available redacted information. He's like, more's coming. Don't worry. Thousands of videos, thousands of still pictures. Now it's a hoax. So a Democrat-led hoax. So this picture that you see of all those, so Donald Trump took part in the fucking hoax.
Well,
Donald Trump helped Democrats purvey the hoax of the Epstein files with these fucking fake binders. I mean, you have to believe him at this point. You have to be paid to believe him, or you have to be effectively the dumbest fuck on the planet.
Not only is it just ridiculous to claim that it's a hoax, he and his followers spent years convincing people that Democrats were the perpetrators of this thing. Not only
and
now they've made it into they're making it up.
Doesn't exist. It's all made up, and they did it.
Yeah,
they did it. Like I hate Benny Johnson. I'd like to go down to wherever Benny Johnson lives. I'd like to grab him by his hair, and I'd like to drag him through the streets for an hour.
Those kind of violent things, but yes, I hate him.
I would. I still would. Him, Tim Pool. I'd like to turn Tim Pool into a fucking human accordion. I really would.
I can't do the violent stuff.
I can. I'm good at it,
but I can't. I can't even sit around and listen to it. I get mad. But
Tim, let me just read you. No, I know we're built different.
Yeah, I know.
I don't mind.
I'm a lover,
street
not
justice.
A fighter.
Yeah, I'm a fighter, but I'm a lover. But I like to fight. Let me just go through the flippage over the past 48 hours of Tim Pool, Dinesh D'Souza. Okay, Tim Pool, Dinesh D'Souza, Alan Dershowitz, who makes a re-entry into our 5-stack today, and Charlie Kirk. Listen,
Charlie Kirk.
Fuck it. I you know what? I got to tell you, I'm not a fan of Benny Johnson at the moment. I'm like, Benny Johnson's like, what the fuck's happening right now? My entire identity and life's falling apart. This is not real. Charlie Kirk, October 7th, 2024, ahead of the election, vote Trump to release the Epstein list.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk then said it's time to move on. He trusts the government. That was yesterday. You can go and read about it, deanblundell.substack.com. Yeah. Dinesh D'Souza, 7 months ago, newly confirmed U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is going to call for the Epstein client list to be released to the public. This is what Americans want. Expose the evil. Dinesh D'Souza today is like, it's time to move on. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Tim Pool, 100 times, and I've got one example from 2019, December 2019. Main reason he's such a fucking loser, Tim Pool. I swear to God, I would turn him inside out. The main reason I will never watch The Mandalorian is that I'm not going to pay Disney Plus until ABC News publishes the evidence they have on Epstein. Yesterday, he puts out, it's insane that Democrats voted to have the U.S. government publish child porn with the Epstein files. What the fuck is even going on anymore? Right? I mean, these, and then Alan Dershowitz, who, if you remember a couple of days ago, Dersh is like, hand to God, I know who's suppressing the files. I know why they're being suppressed. I know the names of the people, and this is a crime and it should come out. Goes on, this is 48 hours ago, 12 hours ago, maybe 15, goes on with Cuomo on his weird, News Nation show, Chris Cuomo. And he's like, there's no real list.
You know what's interesting is that Dershowitz is definitely on that list.
This is the same guy who Virginia Giuffre said, I had sex with him. He totally took off his underwear and launched a bunch of lawsuits at her, which went nowhere. And Alan Dershowitz, who admitted to getting a rubby on Epstein Island, but kept his underwear on. Like, he's in the fucking
definitely he's in the list, and he's a big proponent of Epstein. I mean, this is complete bullshit. This is to suggest that he's I mean, he might be aware of who's in the list or on the list because he was there. He probably saw a lot of what was going on. But to suggest that he is innocent and that he doesn't know what he's going on is just bullshit. Look, this cabal, and it really is a cabal of people, have some people call it the deep states. They think the deep state is sort of like the elite, the sort of hidden elite inside the bureaucracy of the America, and they call that the deep state. That isn't really what the deep state started out being. The deep state started out being the intersection between intelligence agencies, organized crime, and terrorist groups. Because, at various points in the last 100 years, it's been beneficial for certain intelligence agencies to use another country's organized criminal elements to, get things done, move drugs, move information, move women, who knows, move anything, or guns, for example. It's a great way to move guns, the IranContra affair. And then terrorist organizations have also played a great role as sort of proxy ways of hitting at your enemies without it being about you. And intelligence organizations, play this game all the time. What happened, though, after the collapse of the Soviet Union is all these elements moved into the United States, moved into Israel, moved into other places, and they began to take over the institutions that they were once just working with. So they became the intelligence agencies, and they became the organized criminal enterprises of the world, and they've grown into this monolith. We've now got this monolith of this transnational criminal organization that's running countries, and it runs Russia, and it runs Hungary, and it runs Turkey to some extent, and it runs Israel to some extent, and they are desperately trying to take control of the United States.
You know what? You know what's amazing about that too, Zev, that you bring up? I mean, is the campaigning behind that nationalistic approach when it's such a global transnational criminal fucking ring.
Yeah.
Like they you project it because you are it.
Mm-hmm.
They complain about the World Economic Forum when, the IDU, Stephen Harper's group, is associated with all these other authoritarian organizations around the world to promote authoritarian and conservative values. And it goes a step further to transnational conservatism, transnational authoritarianism, with groups like, countries like India, the United States, Russia, the United States, Iran, the United States, Hungary, the United States, China, the United States. They're all after the same thing. They're all after the same thing. And it's not that those countries and the people are after the same thing. It's that the leaders of those countries are all after the same thing. Dominance, power, influence, money, subservience.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they accuse progressives of being part of this like World Economic Forum, progressive cabal of LGBTQ trans loving people that are out to eat your kids, what they're truly telling you is that's them.
Mm-hmm.
That's them. That is them. And that is what we're watching. That's what we're watching behind the obfuscation of anything to do with the Jeffrey Epstein files. And I'll go a step further. I said it yesterday, and I'll bring it up again today because I think it's really fucking important. You know all these crazy Supreme Court decisions that are like, yeah, Donald Trump can fire 100,000 people at the Department of Education. Yeah, Donald Trump can, and his regime of fucking morons can take migrants and people of color and someone who speaks Spanish just for speaking Spanish, and take away their human rights and throw them in jail forever and send them to CCOT.
Yep.
That is the goal. That is what Donald Trump wants. And that is what China does. And that is what Russia does. And that is what fucking Hungary does. And that is what every organization that's associated with, because they want to usher in that age of authoritarianism, which is a global fucking movement. And they're all part of each other's fucking business. And they're all protecting each other. And I wouldn't doubt it for a second if a lot of these authoritarian interests, a lot of the fucking monetary interests that align with the authoritarian interest, tie back to these decisions that are made by the Supreme Court allowing Donald Trump to do this, because I have a sneaking suspicion we're all going to point back to the Epstein files when it comes to the Supreme Court of the United States of America.
That is very astute, but I can also say this. I think that the origins of this particular, deep state sort of takeover of the world is in the Epstein story, in that it comes from the Iran-Contra affair. After Watergate, there was a real chill in America about doing any covert operations, and it was George Bush Sr., who was a former CIA director, who began farming out all this intelligence work the CIA used to do to our so-called allies around the world through Saudi Arabia, Israel, all these other countries started building their own intelligence operations on America's behalf. And in that moment, we sort of lost control of our own intelligence operations. And it's interesting that, Watergate happened and um, Bill Barr at the time was the liaison for the CIA to the House. And as they were making I think I can't remember the commission's name, but it'll come to me in a second. The commission that investigated Watergate recommended the ending of all these black covert operations by the CIA. And it was Bill Barr that helped introduce all that new world. And he worked under Bush at the time, who helped farm out all the stuff to these other countries around the world.
You're talking about pre-diabetic Bill Barr, right?
Yeah, this is young Bill Barr, CIA operative Bill Barr. He's always been a CIA operative, by the way. Fast forward a few years later, the Iran-Contra affair happens. Iran-Contra affair happens directly as a result of the fact that they'd had all these black covert operations.
The Ollie North thing. I mean, my dad had an Ollie North bumper sticker. Lived in Canada. I'm like, probably.
Who was involved in that? One Robert Maxwell was involved in that. The father of Ghislaine Maxwell was involved in that, and Epstein was involved in that. And that's the story I'm putting out tomorrow night, as we do part 2 of The Secret Life of Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't know I had this until I listened to one of these tapes yesterday, and I was like, wait a second, Hoffenberg is really saying that Epstein was involved in the Iran-Contra affair and laundering money for the Iran-Contra affair through Towers Financial. It's a huge exclusive, and it's aired before. Ironically, this stuff has aired before. It just never landed because we didn't even understand it in that way back then. So that's part of what we were airing in the next few days. But my point is really this: who covered up Iran-Contra? When the people were finally absolved and given pardons for Iran-Contra, it was Bill Barr who pardoned all these people involved in Iran-Contra. And then you fast forward a few years later, and you've got Jeffrey Epstein dead in a jail cell at the MCC. And who is involved in covering that up, and who's suspected of maybe being there in the days leading up to that very day when Hoffenberg died? Sorry, when Epstein died. Bill Barr is suspected of being there. And so at every step
Not
of
to
the
be
way,
confused with comedian Bill Burr, by the way. I just want everybody to know that. Yeah.
And also was the Attorney General. So you've got this, these real life figures who sort of reappear all the time in the same story and doing the same kind of thing. And, sometimes you got to just, some things just aren't coincidence. A lot of things aren't coincidence, but maybe none of these things are coincidence. And I really believe that. I don't think there are any coincidences here. I think that the reason that we've got this continued cover up after cover up after cover up, and what we're seeing right now happening in the White House is yet another attempt at a cover up, is because they don't want the story, which has been dominating world affairs for the last 80 years, to be exposed in any way. And it is coming out. One hopes it's coming out. If it's not, we're in for a lot more. But this is that they're trying to do.
Yeah, and let me wrap up today's 5-stack, which was really a 1-stack with like 15 different tendrils. With this, don't we all want to stop pedophilia? Don't we all want the truth? Whether you're MAGA, progressive, Republican, don't we all want to get to the bottom of what and the reason why everybody voted for Trump? He told them he was going to drain the swamp. Don't we all want to drain the swamp? Don't we all want to find out and help these young girls, thousands of young women whose lives have been ruined by rich criminals, heads of state, celebrities, billionaires? Don't we all want to protect those who need to be protected? Don't we all want to do that? And don't we all want to see accountability where we haven't seen it, and we see the president of the United States publicly flaunting, mocking people who want accountability for pedophiles like Tim Pool, Charlie Kirk, Dinesh D'Souza, Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, anybody that has told you to move on from accountability where it comes to a transnational pedophilic ring that has destroyed families, destroyed lives, caused multiple suicides when it comes to the victims of this pedophile ring. Don't we want to help them? Don't we want to help their families? This isn't about politics. This isn't about connecting dots anymore. This is about, okay, we've got an opportunity to fucking unwrap the truth, right? We've got an opportunity to help. We've got an opportunity to restart. We've got an opportunity to get to the bottom of it. Don't we all want that? We do. The party of Trump does not. They've now taken 3 votes. 1, to block Ghislaine Maxwell from testifying in front of Congress. 2, to prevent the Epstein files from coming out. And 3, another vote that just recently happened, to prevent anybody associated with the Epstein files from testifying about what they know. Republicans did that at the behest of Trump. Dershowitz, Kirk, every major fucking influencer and anybody associated and in the know got phone calls from Donald Trump yesterday and the day before saying, change the fucking channel. CNN reported it. We know it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And not just CNN, multiple news outlets. Donald Trump got to Dershowitz, got to everybody saying, help, help, help. This is a fucking 4-alarm blaze. None of those people are interested in helping the victims of pedophilia. They're interested in the propagation of pedophilia. They don't give a fuck about anybody who was victimized by any of these people. Tim Pool is protecting pedophiles. Charlie Kirk is protecting pedophiles. Donald Trump is protecting himself, a pedophile, and all of his pedophile friends, all of his sexually abusive friends, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That is a way bigger story. The cover-up of the cover-up is on. We know it. We can see it. We're going to get something out of this. But by God, if you were a maggot, if you were a God-fearing human being who said you could look past all the shit with Donald Trump, the felonies, 34 of them, the inability to fucking string a sentence together, the inability to run a country, terrible moral compass because he was going to stop child trafficking, now's your time to fucking put your money where your mouth is. Now's your time to stand on those values. Now is your time to say, I've had enough. Marjorie Taylor Greene said it yesterday in a tweet. I mean, you've got, and she's fucking insane. But now is your time to put your money where your mouth is. And those who don't are complicit in the abuse, the rape of thousands of women, young girls. They are helping cover it up. They are pedophile adjacent, and they are helping other pedophiles get away from it. There is no other way to look at it. Not one. Where I sit, and there shouldn't be any other way to look at it from where you sit. Other than that today, like we can talk about all the transnational bullshit and the espionage and who's involved and all that other stuff and the joy of watching Donald Trump. But by God, there are victims here. And if you said you were going to ride for the victims because you love Donald Trump, ride for the victims and watch him flail and then learn from this experience. But if you don't stand there and say, I'm going to do what I said I came here to do, which is protect children, women from this type of behavior, you're complicit. You are an accomplice. Doesn't matter if you were there or not 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Doesn't matter if you are on Epstein Island. Does not matter. You are complicit. And I hope you take that with you today, and I hope everybody shares this with people because it's very, very fucking important.
That's great. Well done. That's amazing. DeanBlundell.substack.com is where you got to go to subscribe to this amazing genius of a wordsmith and reporter. I'm not allowed to call you a reporter, whatever. I'm calling you a reporter today because you are. Go there and subscribe. You'll find a lot of the information, a lot of the stories that we've covered today on that brilliant Substack. Come to narrative.org, narrativ.org, and I'll keep filing updates on re-airs of The Secret Life of Jeffrey Epstein. You can also see Katie Johnson's affidavit there, plus a whole lot of news stories that I'm just busy uncovering as I'm looking at all these old tapes and old recordings I have of Steve Hoffenberg and I talking and all these other interviews I've had. You know, just to echo what you're saying there, Dean, you know, someone said on the chat, you know, is there any hope? Is there a way out of this? And the answer is the truth. And the truth will set us free. I have no doubt about it. That is the number one thing that can help America lose the controls that we've had from these, autocrats that are taking over our country. The truth is what will ultimately set us free. And I hope everyone sticks to supporting that, support the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and support the truth wherever it happens, especially on Dean's blog and on my blog and on any other Substacker here who pushes the truth and does the independent journalism that really matters. That's the 5 stack. We'll see you again tomorrow.